Hello friends, if you want to learn NCERT science, you are at the right place. I am Rajpal Singh and you are watching Easy Science with Rajpal. Please hit the subscribe button and press the bell icon for my latest videos. Let's learn science. Welcome to the second video of the chapter Life Processes. In this video we will be talking about heterotrophic mode of nutrition. In the first video, we have talked about autotrophic mode of nutrition. And what are autotrophs? Those organisms which make their own food are called as autotrophs. In this part, we will be talking about those animals which don't make their own food. They are called as heterotrophs. So all the organisms, those who cannot make their own food are called as heterotrophs, or their mode of nutrition is known as heterotrophic mode of nutrition. They depend on others for their food, because they don't have the necessary the structure present in them as chloroplast, the chlorophyll, all the light absorbing material is not present in their body. So they depend on others for their food. So we call them heterotrophic mode of nutrition, and we call them heterotrophs. There are three types of heterotrophic mode of nutrition. The first is holozoic, then saprophytic, then parasitic mode of nutrition. So in the holozoic mode of nutrition, first the organism takes the food inside the body, then digest it. They don't digest the food outside. They may be unicellular, they may be multicellular. As you talk about amoeba, it is a unicellular organism. It takes the food in the cell, then digest it. If you talk about multicellular, as we are as a human, so we also take the food inside the body, then digest it. So this mode of nutrition is known as holozoic mode of nutrition, when you take the food inside the body and digest it. So examples will be amoeba and humans. The second part is saprophytic mode of nutrition. And in this, the organism feed on dead and decaying material. As you have seen, if you just keep a bread in a moisture medium for 2 or 3 days, the bread mold will grow on it. So all the dead and decaying material, if any organism grows on that we call as saprophytes, and the mode is known as saprophytic mode of nutrition. The examples are fungus. Okay, you can be confused in fungus and fungi. In some countries the fungi is spoken, and in some countries the fungi is spoken. So it is a singular form. If a single plant organism is there, we call it is fungi. And if many of them are there, we call them fungus. The same way is with the alga and algae. Algae is a plural form, and alga is a singular form. So examples will be bacteria and the fungus. And there are one plant which is also that saprophytic. It is monotropha plant. Okay, so this is all about the saprophytic. They digest the food outside. They secrete the acid outside the body, then digest it and take the nutrient in the body. They don't take the whole food inside the body. So the next one is parasitic mode of nutrition. In parasitic, the organism feed on living organisms. They draw their food from the living organisms, and that living organism on which they live, they can live inside the body, they can live outside the body. So all that organism on which they live are called as host. So parasite live on the body of the host or inside the body of the host. As in plants, if you see, it is cascata plant. We also call it dodder plant or amoeba. And in that animals, there are ticks, lices, and tapeworm that lives in the intestine of the human. It is also a parasite. So these are the three forms of heterotrophic mode of nutrition: holozoic, saprophytic, and parasitic. There are other forms also which are not completely heterotrophic but also come in the category of the heterotrophic. The first is symbiotic organisms or symbiosis. The relationship we call as symbiosis, as lichens are there. So again, you will be confused. In some countries lichens are spoken, and in some country lichens are spoken. So we will be talking about lichens. So what are lichens? They are the combination or mutually benefited combination of alga and fungus. The algae has the capability to synthesize their own food. It gives the food to the fungus, and fungus provide the protection. So if any organisms come in close association in which they both are benefited from each other, we call them, this relationship is symbiosis, and that is called a symbiotic mode of nutrition. The next is insectivorous plants. Insectivorous plants depend on some insects for the requirement of nitrogen, because in the soil these insectivorous plants are growing, and in that soil the availability of the usable nitrogen is less, so they have to take the nitrogen to make the protein. So they trap an insect and dissolve with the digestive juices and take the nitrogen out of it and make the protein. So these are the two categories, symbiosis and insectivores. We also consider it in the heterotrophic mode of nutrition. Now we will be talking about holozoic mode of nutrition. In the we have talked about the three categories. In the first category, that is holozoic mode of nutrition. In this category, we will take two organisms. One is unicellular and the other is multicellular. The unicellular we will take amoeba, and in multicellular we will study the digestive system or the system of nutrition in human. So let's start with the amoeba. Amoeba capture the food. So now what is the food of amoeba? The food of amoeba is smaller particles of food which are present inside the water. So it engulfs the food particle with the help of pseudopodia. Pseudopodia are just the outgrowths of the cell membrane. So it engulfs the food and makes the food vacuole. As I described earlier, it also take the food inside the body and make the food vacuole. In food vacuole, it digests the digestive enzymes and take the nutrient out of it, and then it takes the food outside the body. So this whole process of taking in food is known as endocytosis. This is the way the amoeba acquires its nutrition. It is a step-by-step process. So if amoeba takes the liquid food, we call it pinocytosis. If amoeba takes solid food or semi-solid food, we call it phagocytosis. So this is all about the nutrition in amoeba. Now let's begin with the nutrition in humans. In this part, we will be simultaneously study the anatomy of the human digestive system, and also we will be talking about the enzymes secreted by the human system. So let's start with the definition of digestion. The digestion is the breakdown of complex food materials into simpler forms which can be used by the body. So if you talk about rice, in the rice you are eating starch. So our body doesn't know starch. It cannot take the starch and make the body and generate the energy. It needs to be broken into glucose, and this whole process is done by the digestive system, and the process is known as digestion. So digestion is from complex as starch to the simple as sugar. So breakdown of molecule is known as simply from complex to simple is simply digestion. Okay. So now you are clear about the digestion. The second thing is, who breaks this complex food materials into simple? Those are enzymes. So enzymes are the biocatalysts. As you have understood the catalyst in chemistry, catalysts are those chemicals which help in reaction to happen. Okay, it takes the reaction to the lower pass, but we are not talking about that. We are talking about that catalyst, we call them biocatalysts, present in the human digestive system. So here is the definition. Enzymes are biocatalysts which break down the food from complex molecules to the simpler forms. Those we call as enzymes. The example can be pepsin, trypsin, salivary amylase, etc. So you are clear about the digestive process and the enzymes. So now let's begin. So the first part that we need to understand is mouth. Mouth, as we are all aware about, contains teeth and tongues and enclosed the cavity. So inside the mouth there is a buccal cavity. Buccal cavity is the space enclosed by the surrounding membrane of the mouth. Okay, this is the buccal cavity. In buccal cavity we have teeth. About the teeth, you know that there are incisor to cut, there are canines to tear, there are premolars and molars to chew the food. Okay, so food is initially broken down or grinded in the mouth, and there is tongue which helps in the mixing of the enzymes in the food and mixing of the saliva in the mouth. So you are aware about the buccal cavity. Now we need to understand what kind of digestion happens in the mouth. In the mouth, starch are converted into sugars. Sugar can be maltose. Okay, starch, that if you eat potato, if you eat rice, those have the starch. So they are converted into sugars. So who convert this material? There is an enzyme called salivary amylase which convert the starch into sugar. So where is this present? It is present in the salivary glands, present in our mouth. They are also present inside our cheeks and under the jaw, the skin which is under the jaw. Sometimes you see the food and your mouth waters. That is saliva, and saliva contains the enzyme salivary amylase. There are two functions of the saliva. When saliva mixes with the food, it makes the food soft and easy passes through the digestive tract. And now there is an enzyme called salivary amylase which converts the starch into sugar. So there is a term in your book and it is food bolus. So what is a food bolus? When saliva mixes with food, it becomes food bolus. So now this food bolus, where does it go? It goes into the esophagus. Esophagus is a long pipe which takes the food from the mouth to the stomach. But there is a problem that there are two pipes. One is windpipe and second is esophagus or food pipes. So the food must go into the food pipe. It should not go into the windpipe. So there is a system which stops or directs the food to go into the esophagus. Because at the starting of the windpipe, that rim is there and we call it glottis, the opening or the mouth of the windpipe. It is stopped by an epiglottis. So there is an epiglottis structure which directs the food or closes the windpipe and directs the food into the esophagus. Because it is above the that glottis, we call it epi. Epi means above, glottis means above the glottis. So now the food doesn't go into the windpipe. When you swallow anything, your that windpipe is closed by the epiglottis and the food is going into the esophagus. So now in the esophagus, what is there? There are it is a long pipe, and in the wall of the esophagus there are circular rings. There are circular muscles present, and those muscles contract and relax rhythmically. As you make a fist, your fingers make a ring, and if you close first finger, then second, then third, and then fourth, and if you have something in your fist, it goes down. In the same way, these muscles contract and relax rhythmically and the food is pushed down. This process of contraction and relaxation rhythmically is known as peristaltic movements, and this process is known as peristalsis. So by the peristalsis, the food goes into the stomach. And sometimes if the food poisoning is there and some acidic substance is present in the food, and the food need to not to go into the small intestine, it need to come out of your mouth, then that process is called as retroperistalsis. Means the food, the contraction and relaxation of the muscles present in the esophagus happens in the reverse way, and food is taken from the stomach and comes out through your mouth, and we call it vomiting. Now from esophagus the food goes into the stomach. There is no digestion in the esophagus, the food is just going down into the stomach. So now what is stomach? Stomach is a bag-like structure, and when you are eating, all the food is directly going into the stomach. It stays there for some time, and in the stomach, in the wall of the stomach, there are muscles. It is contracting and relaxing rhythmically, so the enzymes are mixed into the food. So now we need to understand that what regulates the food to enter into the stomach and coming out of the stomach. These are sphincters. Sphincters are also present at anus. Sphincters are ring type of muscles. They open and food can come in and go out of some structure. So all the sphincter which is present between esophagus and the stomach is known as cardiac sphincter, and the sphincter which is present between stomach and the small intestine is known as pyloric sphincter. The pyloric sphincter takes the food from the allows the food from that stomach to enter into the small intestine in small pieces. So now in the wall of the stomach there are gastric glands present, and the gastric glands secrete the secretions. We call it gastric juices. So in the stomach, gastric juices are secreted. In the gastric juices there are three things present. The first is hydrochloric acid or HCl, the second is pepsin, and the third is mucus. These three things are secreted. Let's study one by one. The first secretion or the first part present in the gastric juices is HCl. This HCl do two things. The first, the food is coming from the mouth and it is alkaline because of the saliva. It needs to be converted into acidic medium because the next enzyme is pepsin, and pepsin cannot be active. Pepsin is secreted in the form of pepsinogen. It is inactive form and it becomes active in the acidic medium. So that acidic medium is provided by the acid hydrochloric acid. Okay. So now the second function of the hydrochloric acid is to kill all the germs. Suppose you eat food and some germs are present in it, so that acid will kill all the germs present in it. There are two functions of the acid that you have understood. Okay. The first is to kill the microorganism or germs present in the food. The second function is to provide the acidic medium for the pepsin to act. And the second enzyme which is present in the gastric juices is pepsin. Pepsin is in the pepsinogen form, and when acid is there, acidic medium is there, it is converted into pepsin. So now this pepsin act on the food and act on particularly protein and partially digest the proteins. It does not digest finally. Finally is done by trypsin. First the pepsin partially digest. So now what is that partially digestion? The protein has peptide bonds. The molecules of the proteins are connected by peptide bonds. It breaks the peptide bonds, and finally the proteins will be converted into amino acid by trypsin. So it partially means half digest the protein. It convert into the break the peptide bond, and small molecules of proteins are available. So the pepsin partially digests the proteins. So now there is a third secretion which is called as mucus. Why that mucus is needed? Because as we have studied, the HCl is present in the stomach, and HCl also digests the wall of the stomach. If the mucus is not secreted, it will digest the wall of the stomach and cause the burning that we call acidity, and that mucus is secreted continuously. So the inner surface of the wall of the stomach is constantly building itself by secreting the mucus. It is getting digested by HCl and again the building itself. So what happens if the mucus is not there or extra acid is secreted? In that case, it digests the mucus and now causes the burn inside the stomach that we call as acidity. So now how to cure the acidity? You need a base to cure the acid. So antacids are there. And antacids are basically bases which neutralize the acid and make water and salt. So there is milk of magnesia, there is eno, there is a diazine, and the bases are mild bases are present in that neutralize the acidic effect in our stomach and stop the acidity. So now you have understood the digestion in the stomach. Let's move forward. And now the food from the pyloric sphincter goes into small intestine. So now let us focus on the word small. Although it is very long, why it is called small? Because it has smaller diameter. That's why it is called as small. Otherwise, its length is about 5 times of the length of any organism. And it is also depend on the type of the organism. If it is carnivorous, the length of the small intestine is small as compared to herbivores, because in carnivores the meat is easy to digest, and in the herbivores it is approximately 60 meter in humans. If you talk about the humans, there is approximately 6 meter long. So why the length of small intestine is so long? To increase the surface area or the absorption area. As if you have a big pipe or the large diameter pipe, you measure the inside surface area, then you put very small pipes inside it, and then you measure the surface area of each pipe and then add up. It will be more. In the same way, the small intestine is its diameter is small and it is long because the food gets more surface to be digested. And it is also supplied with the small finger like projections. We call them villi. Villi are present in it. They further increase the surface area. So this is the structure of the villi. In the villi there is a blood vessels. It is richly supplied with the blood vessels. So one side there is a nutrient, the other side there is a blood, and inside there is a membrane of the villi. So from the membrane of the villi, the food from the digested food enters into the blood, and from that blood the food particle which our body needs go into the whole body. So these villi help in the taking the nutrition from the food, and they also increase the surface area of the intestine. So this is about the structure of the intestine, and there is small intestinal glands also present which secrete the intestinal juice that we will be discussing. When the food enters in the small intestine, it has to be made alkaline because it is acidic in the stomach, and that medium is provided by the bile juice secreted by the liver, which is the largest gland of the body. The liver secretes the bile juices. Bile juices make that food alkaline, and the bile juices are also stored in gallbladder. Sometimes it's stored in the gallbladder, and from gallbladder it can enter the small intestine. So now the bile juice has two functions. The first function is it makes the food alkaline, which is required for trypsin to act. As you have seen in the stomach, the pepsinogen was made active by the HCl. In the same way, the bile juice provides alkaline medium which activates the trypsin to act. And the second function of the bile salt which is present in the bile juice is emulsification of the fats. So now the fat molecules are bigger, and what is this emulsification? It is same as our shirts or our clothes get dirt, and soaps emulsify it, means encloses those dirt particles and get that out of the cloth. In the same way, the food fat molecules are bigger. They need to be broken down into smaller pieces. That is done by the bile salts. Bile salts enclose those bigger molecules and break into smaller pieces of the fat molecules. So now these two things are done by the bile juice: digestion of the fat or emulsification of the fat, or making the food alkaline. Then there is pancreas. This is also a gland present side by the liver, and it secretes the pancreatic juices. In pancreatic juices, there are two enzymes. First is trypsin, the second is lipase. So what does this trypsin do? Trypsin act on the protein, as we have discussed that pepsin partially digested, the further digestion is done by the trypsin. So trypsin converts protein molecules into amino acid. The final digestion is there. So it digests the proteins and it acts in the alkaline medium. The second is lipase. Lipase help in digestion of the fats and the lipids. As you have discussed that bile salts are emulsifying fats, breaking those fats into smaller molecules. Now those smaller molecules are acted upon by lipase. Lipase convert them into fatty acids and glycerol. So fat is converted into fatty acid and glycerol by lipase. Okay, so these are the digestion by liver and the pancreas. Now there are some secretion which are also done by the intestinal glands. They are present in the wall of the intestine and they secrete intestinal juice. So there is a final digestion which happens by these juices. They convert carbohydrate into glucose, protein into amino acid, fats into fatty acid and glycerol. So the all digestion happens in the small intestine and all the absorption without water. Water is absorbed by the large intestine and all the nutrients are absorbed in the small intestine. It is absorbed by the villi present in there because they have the blood vessels present in them. Okay. So now by the peristaltic movements, the food now goes into the large intestine, and before going into the large intestine, there is a one small organ present. We call the appendix. As you have heard about the appendix pain in your family or your relatives or some other person. So these organ is a vestigial organ. It is not required by our body. When we were living in the forests, we have to digest the leaves, and for that this appendix was active. It has some bacteria which digested these hard substances like cellulose, which we cannot digest now. So now it has reduced in size. At that time it was a bigger organ. So now it is a vestigial organ. It is not required our body. Sometimes it causes pain. Some food can stuck in it. If food stuck into it, it causes pain, and doctor need an surgery and removes the appendix. So there is no need of appendix in the body. So now what is the large intestine? Although its length is short, it is called as large because the diameter is large. So now digestion doesn't happen here. Here is only one absorption of water. This large intestine is also having the villi. These villi now take the water from the digested food, and that water goes into the blood. So there is a absorption of water in the large intestine. And from large intestine, the food enters into rectum. There is no digestion, nothing happens there. The food is stored there for some time. And now from that rectum, when rectum is filled, the food is excreted from the body through anus. And the anus has again the sphincter. The ring type muscles or the sphincter relaxes and the food comes out of the body, or we excrete the waste food materials. The small portion is left out, and that is dental caries or dental cavities. All of you know that there are a lot of bacteria which are living inside our mouth, and in this video we have studied about the bacteria that have the saprophytic mode of nutrition. They secrete the digestive enzyme or acid outside the body. Those acid can affect our enamel, which is present on the outer hard covering of the tooth. So now that acid demineralizes. Demineralizes means it takes out the minerals like calcium and phosphorus from that enamel. It softens the enamel and makes a small hollow space in it. So we call it that dental caries. It is done by the bacteria or the enzyme or the acid secreted by those bacteria. So there are also dental plaque. Plaque is means the bacteria and the food particle, when they join together and stuck on the teeth, we call it a plaque. So those dental caries and plaque is caused by bacteria. When it has to digest the food particle, it secretes the acid or enzyme outside, and those enzymes make the dental caries inside our mouth. So thank you very much. I hope you have understood the heterotrophic mode of nutrition. If you have any queries, please do let me know in the comment box. Thank you very much.